Hi everyone, it's Natalie here. Welcome. So today is December 27th, 2021, and today is the second day of Kwanzaa. Day 2 is Kujichagulia. Kujichagulia. So it is self-determination. I'm going to try and pull my notebook out here without dumping everything everywhere, but I hope that's visible. This is the sort of overall shape of the spread of 7 cards and all of the different prompts that are there today for self-determination or Kujichagulia. The most prominent history I carry within me is the first. The second, the traditional foundations that inform my life. The third, how I primarily define myself. The fourth, my inner authentic name. The fifth, how I create for myself. The sixth, how I speak for myself. And the seventh, my highest aspiration. So, a few things before I start. The first is that I have already spent the time drawing and looking at and thinking about and contemplating and reading. Ooh, big loud vehicle just passed. Sorry about that. Yeah, like reading and thinking about and contemplating the meaning of each card, because doing it on camera takes a very long time. And yesterday I did take that time, and the video is still uploading. I don't know why it's taken so long. I used my phone instead of my laptop because I wanted to get the overhead view, or like a broader view. I think I just took a broader view, and it did not work well at all. So that video is still uploading. I'm not going to refilm it. I'm going to go ahead and let it finish uploading. I last checked. It's been 24 hours. It's at 79%, and it's been uploading for 24 hours. So lesson learned there. Oh boy. So I'm going to try and keep this one a little bit more concise. We'll see how that goes, but I'm going to use my laptop for this one because I don't want to delay it any further. And I really want to get these videos out there. The second thing is, very sadly, found out on my walk this morning with Henry while I was kind of scrolling through my YouTube feed, that Desmond Tutu died. And a bright light in the world went out when he passed. They were saying on the news, that I was listening to, what a voice he was for South Africa. He as a figurehead, as a worker for peace and justice and love, and as a voice of reason in the world, we've lost one of the greatest. One of the greatest. So it's from that place. It's from that place that I offer this practice today. I can think of few people still alive today with the level of self-determination on behalf of others that Desmond Tutu had. He would have done whatever it took to end apartheid in South Africa and to stand up for the rights of the indigenous, native, black population of South Africa. And in so doing, became an example of how that can work for many, many nations around the world and for people everywhere. He was a beloved friend of the Dalai Lama, beloved friend. So my heart aches, as people get older, they lose friends and people that have inspired them so deeply from their own generation. And it's heartbreaking. It's really heartbreaking. It's not something I look forward to at all. But it's something that we will all eventually confront. I remember last year, Desmond Tutu and the Dalai Lama had a video call together on New Year's Day. And I can't remember if it was Western New Year's Day or if it was Losar, Tibetan Losar New Year's Day. But it was beautiful to see the two of them waving and smiling to one another, in the camera. I mean, the two of them had so few peers, so few people they could turn to, who would understand their own experience. Yeah, I mean, it's a bright light that has left the physical realm, and now hopefully will join us and watch over us from the non-physical realm where he is now. So, yeah, that felt really important to acknowledge. So with that said, we move on. So looking at Kujichagulia, this quality of self-determination. Hi, Henry. Henry's very determined here. To put his head in my lap and distract me, aren't you? Yeah. You're such a sweet baby. So the first prompt is the most prominent history I carry within me. So the first card was an interesting one for me to grab and flip over. It is Temptation or the Devil. And I did, of course. Henry, can you sit down? Can you lie down? Can you lie down? Thank you. That's right. Good boy. And so, of course, this one is not a comfortable card to see, right? You don't, the most prominent history I carry within me is the devil. But when there's a number of ways to view this one. Courtney Alexander, the creator of the deck and author of the book, really makes a wonderful point, actually, in her book that, the idea of a devil is really not an African principle, right? The gods and deities in African traditional religion, are not are not as simple as good and evil. They just aren't. And so what she looks at instead, or places an emphasis on instead is, to choose whether to navigate the world from a negative or positive disposition, right? She also says temptation can never push us to do anything that isn't already in our hearts. The chains we bear are an illusion. It's beautiful. And then she points out that the critter here on this necklace is kind of like a crawfish. And a crawfish sheds its exoskeleton regularly. So we can choose to shed different things regularly. So as I reflected on this one, and I'm reflecting on this, I think, the most prominent history I carry within me is it's really complicated because, of course, I recognize immediately the shadow, which is, this is as a white woman looking at the most prominent history I carry within me from the perspective of a very Afrocentric deck and voice, immediately what comes to me is, is the very dark history, of my background, ancestrally. So, being someone who comes from, uh, an older white family in the Midwest, there is going to be slavery in that background. There's going to be profound injustice, and wrongdoing. So that was the first thing that popped into my head, right? But when we talk about self-determination and we talk about what this means in terms of the most prominent history I carry within me, then I begin to look at it in a very, again, from my own perspective of being very white, and thinking in terms of like, okay, what does that mean then? That means, my most prominent history within me is very negative, or it means that the shadow is what is ruling things, right? The bad parts, the evil parts. Again, not really taking into account the true, this is all about guilt and not about really seeing what's there, right? Not really seeing what's there. What's really there in terms of self-determination and the most prominent history I carry within me is this issue of seeing things like that. Of letting some of the darker, more difficult aspects of my own past and history impede upon my ability to make choices, and to make choices that could be coming from a more positive place, certainly from a more altruistic place, and from a place that could be beneficial rather than I don't know, it's not self-sacrificing, but basically getting in my own way. Yeah. I think I spend an awful lot of time getting in my own way. It also speaks to me of distraction, that of late it has been hard to be self-determined because the distraction of everything going on and then the need to almost distract from it is really challenging. Yeah, there's a lot there. This is going to be one to journal with for a long time, but that it just tells me that I could be looking at making different decisions from a much better, much higher place that could benefit myself and others, and that at the moment I'm not always the best at making that choice. I do my best, but I'm very limited. I've been limited of late. I've been very limited in the ability to do that. Prompt number 2, the traditional foundations that inform my life. And this one is the Ace of Coins. And I love this card. It's so beautiful. It's one of the ones that had a lot of glitter and sand and texture mixed in. What this one tells me, the traditional foundations that inform my life, they focus around being self-made, being someone who comes from a background where it's like you can do or be anything you want. You should acquire lots and lots of wealth and things and stuff, and plant the seeds of your own wealth and success in the material world and so forth. And that happens and has happened, I think, for me in both positive and negative ways. The way everything is, the pressure has been there to do it a certain way. The encouragement has been there, the assistance has been there, the support has been there, and yet that has not always been an easy thing to do. Yeah. This is, yeah, Yeah, it's the, the ability, the Ace of Coins. I mean, I see this as like, this is the ability to plant the seeds of one's life in a very physical way in the world in order to reap the rewards of it, financial, material rewards of it. Um, yeah, yeah. And of course, Courtney has a lot to say there that's also very relevant, but that is the quickest, most succinct way to put it in terms of how I understand it for myself within the context of the reading. The third prompt, this is where I found what I found fascinating. The prompt, this is how I primarily define myself. And it came out as the chief. Or as we would know this as the emperor. And this is fascinating to me because I would never have thought that I defined myself this way at all. But then, when it contrasted with the next card, I really understood it better. This card has always to me looked like Grace Jones, interestingly, even though it's theoretically, it's a masculine card. And, Courtney definitely poses it as a more masculine card, but it always has reminded me of Grace Jones somehow. I don't think she writes anything in there about Grace Jones. But, there's a lot of the traditional emperor associations with the chief, of the chief being, someone who's in a position of leadership, which I'm not, really. But then in some respects, I always feel like I bear this huge responsibility as though I am or should be in a position of leadership. And I don't know what that's about. But I place a lot of pressure on myself. I realize this is about, carrying a lot of weight on my shoulders. And it's also about putting myself into a box. There's a lot of shoulds that are attached to this card for myself. I'm just going to pull up what she writes about that card. Yeah, so Courtney writes, that the awakened qualities of this card include integration, accomplishment, fulfillment, and wholeness. This is how I primarily define myself. So if I'm not able to accomplish those things, right? If I'm not, then what do we get? We get obstacles, delays, burden, and apathy. And that's really hard. That feels really difficult. It's a lot of responsibility, but it's also really difficult to put that kind of pressure on yourself. She writes, standing in your truth and doing what's best for all is not an easy job, but sometimes it takes the hard decisions to bring about the peace that all are hoping for. Yeah. And at the bottom of the page, she writes, take time to evaluate your sense of will and power. What has been driving you? It's a very, what has been driving me of late? What's been driving me is hard to define, but it is a very kind of square, and I always think of the emperor as a square, someone who colors inside the lines, feeling like I need to figure out how to color inside the lines and meet all the expectations, and it's a lot of pressure to place on oneself. And it's maybe not the best way to define myself, right? It's maybe not the closest thing to my own nature, not necessarily the best way to do things, right? Again, very interesting when contrasted with the next card. And the next card, I look forward to this particular spread and these two prompts every year. Actually, this is the third year I've done it because they're so revealing. So this, fourth card, the prompt is my inner authentic name. And for that, we have Mama Gourd. And she bases the Mama Gourd card on Missy Elliott and just trying to catch the light there so you can see the texture, and Nikki Giovanni. And these are two women there are few people I can think so highly of. I absolutely adore them. Missy Elliott is one of my favorite creators. I can watch her videos over and over and over and over and over again. It's not just her music, it's the creativity that she puts into every aspect of what she makes. And she's inspired me for, well, since I discovered her. So, over 20 years, like 25, 30 years. And Nikki Giovanni, I discovered in college when I was doing my degree in literature, and I fell in love with her writing and her poetry. So what what Courtney writes about Mama Gourd is beautiful, of course. The awakened qualities of Mama Gourd include nurturer, mystic, artistic, intuitive, perceptive. This is also true. The dormant qualities, vain, gullible, enabling, moody, and deceptive. Absolutely spot on. The quotes here from Missy Elliott and Nikki Giovanni are equally beautiful. She writes, the key to my longevity has been to just be me, to be original and authentic, which is Missy Elliott's quote. And from Nikki Giovanni, everyone understands that love comes in many different packages and is used in many different ways. You cannot love beyond your years, nor can you fail to love beneath them. In other words, I think you get the love you need when you open your heart. I just love that. Courtney writes, Mama Gourd is the power of pure reflection and deep consciousness, the element of water in its purest form. She is immensely intuitive, compassionate, and loving. She is also a force to be reckoned with. Those who find themselves in her presence will indeed encounter their true nature, since she is a mirror in which we see even the dirtiest parts of ourselves. The gourd at her crown flows into the gourd at her heart, representing the balance between the mind and emotions. She owns her feelings and deep urges, experiencing them openly and fully. Her imagination is expansive, and she uses wisdom to mold the creative forces within her into something valuable and oftentimes magical. Mama Gourd operates from love and deep conviction. She is driven by her heart, and her love for those she cherishes is without bounds. She is the healer, nurturer, psychic, and creator. When ill-dignified, her inner life is turbulent, sinking into the darkest of waters, further away from the rays of light above. Depression and martyrdom follow when she does not have the resources and outlets she needs. Yeah. It's really beautiful. That absolutely, I find that very moving and very true. Yeah, I mean, it's the more I learn about astrology, and the more I understand about my own ascendant, which is at 29 degrees of Pisces. The more I understand why water is such an important element for me, and not just fire, but as a Sagittarius with an Aries moon and so on. Yeah, it just makes a lot of sense. Makes a lot of sense. And so trying to force myself into this kind of Aries, fiery, square, emperor-like chief position is not helpful. But also, what she writes about the moodiness and so forth really speaks to that relationship with the temptation card. It's the dark moods. It was a tough year last year, really tough. I'm hoping this year coming, which in Tibetan astrology is going to be the water tiger, will be a better year. I'm hopeful. I'm doing my best to be hopeful. I'm going to make hopeful plans and see what arises from that. Let's just say that much. So number 5 is how I create for myself. This was a fascinating card. It's the 10 of Coins. And in the book, it's very big contrast, right? The Ace of Coins, I think of being like someone who, is creating from the ground up versus, and, starting with a seed that's very potent versus manifesting almost from thin air is what that looks like to me. I know she mentions in the book, or writes in the book, about there being like, a forest of trees growing from fertile earth, which may be the case, but this also speaks to me of something that just flashes up, and is just suddenly manifested. And that is how I create things. I will have an idea or a need for something, and if I'm in the right place and I've got the right mindset, if I'm really in the better aspects of this version of myself, that is how I create. It's very immediate. The other thing that stands out too is the closed fist aspect, which I guess must be, in this case, a left fist. She writes a lot about the symbolism of the closed fist, and what that means, the ancestral connection to it, and so forth. And writes about defiance. And I think that's interesting because a lot of the way in which I create what I need for myself, or create work, create art, is often fueled by a sense of rebellion or defiance. But when I do that, things come to fruition very quickly and in great abundance. So I mean, it's a shockingly accurate. It's just shocking how accurate and immediate that one really is. Yeah. Okay, and then the next quote, or the next prompt, is how I speak for myself. Very different from my true nature, and yet very similar. It's young Gord. The eyes of Jaden Smith. So it's the Knight of Cups in any other deck, and yet it is not. There's no doubt, or ability to doubt that Courtney knows her stuff. She really has well researched this. I'm going to just use her words because she'll do a better job than I will anyway. What does she write about young Gord? Yeah, social, idealistic, creative, empathic, romantic, magnetic, dormant qualities, immature, volatile, fickle, insincere, seductive, and ruthless. It's just so much here. Young Gord is the airy and intellectual aspect of waters, right? So air of water. Passionate, sensual, artistic, and highly charming. Due to the steamy, foggy nature of air and water, this is someone whose empathic nature can lead to moodiness, hypersensitivity, and self-sacrifice. The mind and emotions must come into harmony in order for the soul urge to be expressed effectively. Right? Yeah, it's just so much there. That is interesting to me. I mean, when it comes to, I'm not good at speaking for myself. How I speak for myself often involves not wanting to go too deep, right? Presenting that more watery, mystical, gentle, but passionate, not too overcommitted, maybe a little too impulsive, and easily dismissive. Sometimes I can be very easily dismissive of my own ideas and concepts, and I don't speak up for myself very well sometimes at all. Or if I do it, it comes from a very naive place. because I don't want to make assumptions. I don't want to come across as being arrogant. I'm frequently accused of arrogance, but maybe it's also because there is a greater depth underneath the surface that's not being revealed, or allowed to surface, allowed to rise to the surface. I don't know. I really don't know. But it's why would I want to speak from this place? This is what comes to me in terms of the lesson, right? Is why would I want to speak from this place? If I could be speaking and coming from this one, right? Why would I want to present on some level as, a young Jaden Smith when I could be presenting more as Nikki Giovanni or Missy Elliott? That makes, as a woman of my age, why would I diminish my own wisdom or power? And that's something to really take in and look at. Number 7, my highest aspiration. In this case, the Two of Blades, not the same as the Two of Swords, and actually quite a few differences. I'm hoping to catch the light here so you can see all of the detail and the color, and it's so beautiful. So the Two of Blades is, in this case, it's a shaman. And what Courtney writes about it is absolutely stunning. She writes, the awakened aspects or qualities of this card include mental balance, neutrality, compromise, truce, objectivity. The dormant include indecision, stagnancy, denial, passivity, and paradox. That is absolutely in harmony with my highest aspiration. To step away from the lower aspects, or the dormant ones, and into the awakened ones. She writes, under the waning crescent, a shaman stands. The swords in each hand stay poised and ready at the shaman's side for the moment action must be taken. For now, it is simply a time to receive. The shaman takes on a higher persona that eases communication with those in other dimensions. Instead of being blindfolded, they dress in a way that facilitates a higher connection. Just as we think of objectivity as mentally removing our emotions, the same can be said of the spiritual, where the individual ego is put to the side, so downloads from higher realms are without interference. So yeah, this is my highest aspiration, because when I'm in that place where there's balance, the ego is off to one side, I can understand. I find objectivity and everything falls into place and into perspective. So, yeah, boy, if there were ever a, this really speaks greatly to practice, self-determination around spiritual practice, and then allowing that to take me into the choices I make, and making those choices from that place, on a level that is much more in harmony with where I intend to arrive in the world, or to I guess be in the world, the person I want to be in the world, how I wish to show up in the world. That's probably what I'm trying to say. So yeah, beautiful prompt and reading and spread. These are ones that can be used any time of the year. They don't just have to wait for Kwanzaa, but they can really be used at any time. But I do love working with them at this time of the year. So there we go. Not as concise as I intended, but that's not always how it goes. There's a lot to process with these. I am including, I haven't seen any new videos come from Queen Auset this year. There may be a myriad of reasons for that. There's many reasons why she may have a lot going on right now and not be able to be engaged with any of us right now. But I am going to include her videos, I think, in all of the in the description box from last year, because they really are remarkable and moving. So if this is something that you're interested in or that you want to pursue a little bit more, I recommend watching those videos of hers from last year, because they are really beautiful and revealing. So, and inspiring, frankly, very inspiring. All right, friends, I wish you a beautiful day, and I'll be back again tomorrow on the 28th for day 3. Take care. Bye.